Linear algebra is one of those courses that I find I took linear algebra as an undergraduate, and I don't think I fully appreciated it at the time, but maybe over the next year or two after I took linear algebra, as I continued to work on courses in the math major, but also I was taking science courses, social science courses, and linear algebra just kept popping up everywhere. It's one of these subjects that is so useful and versatile. I feel like it is probably the most profound course that we teach in mathematics at the sort of 1 in 200 level. It's just one of these that, for me, it sort of gave me a whole new perspective and way of thinking about not only mathematics in the abstract, but also mathematics in its full flourish of applications. Linear algebra is just so helpful and valuable and versatile, and I hope that after 10 weeks of working on this course with me this summer, that you'll at least begin to appreciate some of the first inklings of that, and that as you go forward into the courses that follow this, in whatever your major at whatever university you happen to be doing that degree, that you'll eventually come to the same kind of realization that I did, that wow, linear algebra is everywhere and we can do so much cool stuff with it. It's also a course that, because it is so valuable both in the abstract and in its applications, that a course like this one that we teach in the math major at Bridgewater has to kind of do justice to both sides of that coin in some way. So we do have another version of linear algebra at BSU that is predominantly a computational course, where everything is sort of doing calculations with matrix and vector stuff, and it doesn't really go too deeply into the theoretical firmament that underlies linear algebra that would help one to sort of spot linear algebraic opportunities and structures elsewhere in mathematics and sciences. Whereas this version of the course is also going to have us digging into that theory and getting our theoretical hands dirty in a lot of ways. And that's going to require some sort of abstract mathematical reasoning and proof-based mathematical reasoning. We're going to have to attend very carefully to definitions and quantifiers and logic. And so a portion of this course is going to involve the discovery and writing and communication of mathematical proof. I've tried to structure the course so that proofs component is about, maybe a quarter or so of what we do, and the other 3/4 is the bread and butter, sort of computational, what are the tools of linear algebra and how do we actually use them. But I think my experience teaching this course is that it's that abstract, proof-based material that students find the most challenging. And so what I'm hoping is that we have some space together this summer to be working together on those proofs, and me giving you some feedback as you're continuing to grow in your skills as a discoverer and writer of proof. Proofs are one of those things that no one learns how to write proofs in one course. In fact, I would venture to say that every working professional mathematician, regardless of how long they've been in the field, is still working on discovering and writing proofs. It's a craft, it's not a skill. And so if you're coming into our course having had an introductory exposure to proofs and logic from our Math 180 course that is a prerequisite at BSU, then you've had some exposure to the basics, but we certainly can't expect you to be an expert in proof writing coming out of that course. And so I'm hoping that this course gives us enough sort of space and grace to recognize that all of us are still growing in that practice of writing proofs. And so my hope for you is that you come out of this course a more confident communicator and discoverer of mathematical proof than today as you're coming in. And if that happens, then I feel like this course has done its job. At Bridgewater in our major, this is the course that kind of lies right on the cusp of our upper level. And so this is the prerequisite for all of our 300 level, junior level, real theoretical based, proofs based courses in upper level math. And so those courses are going to run more on the upside down ratio of maybe 75% abstraction and proof and 25% computation and that kind of stuff. And so, that's my other goal, is to make sure that you're enough prepared and confident in your ability to write proofs and to reason abstractly in mathematics that you can tackle a course like abstract algebra in the fall, for example, and feel like you're prepared at the level of proof to do that work. So that's kind of the role and the philosophy behind linear algebra. We didn't used to teach this course during the summer, once upon a time. I remember maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I taught it during the summer as one of the 5-week, summer session 1 style courses, and it was a breakneck pace. It was just too much stuff to fit into those 5 weeks. And so after that, we sort of stopped offering it as a summer course for a while, and then we brought it back just last year as a course that spans the full 10-week term of the summer. And that we did for the first time last year. And I found teaching that section last year that it really did go a lot better with that extended time than it did when we tried to blitz through it in 5 weeks. I also taught the course last summer in the same hybrid format that we're using this summer, which is that we'll be meeting in this Zoom space every Wednesday, 4:30 to 7 p.m. And then in between those meetings, there will be a chunk of work for you to complete, some of which is individual and some of which you'll complete with your team. I'll talk a little bit more about teams in just a minute. But this is a course that's kind of designed to keep you at some sort of low to moderate level of busy throughout those 10 weeks. And that busyness that happens in between our class meetings is going to be some individual work as well as some work with your teams asynchronously. So that's kind of from a structural perspective, how the course is going to look. Let me say a little bit about teams and kind of the instructional philosophy that the course is built around. So we're using a open educational resource textbook, so it's freely available online. There's a link to it in all of our learning management sites. And it's called Team-Based Inquiry Learning for Linear Algebra, or maybe it's the other way around, Linear Algebra for Team-Based Inquiry Learning. And let me put it up into my camera here and talk a little bit about some of the features of this text and what kind of make it special, I think, unique, and well-suited, I find, to a course like this one. So team-based inquiry learning is a philosophy of teaching and learning, really in any subject, but here we're using it in mathematics, that sort of there's two important pieces of it. The first piece is inquiry. Inquiry means that I'm going to try, to the extent that I can, not to be the one during our class meetings that's sort of lecturing and presenting PowerPoint presentations and you're sitting there and listening and taking notes. We will do little bits of that. But I really do believe that mathematics in particular is not a spectator sport. That the best way to grow as a mathematician in your understanding is to actually do mathematics actively and discover a lot of the key principles of the subject that we're learning. And so this textbook is designed around that idea that rather than me covering the material, it's largely going to be a process of you all uncovering and discovering the material through a sequence of activities that each one maybe takes 5 to 15 minutes during our class. And so our typical class meeting will involve maybe me talking for a few minutes and then turning you out into your teams to do an activity together, and then we come back and debrief, and then that process kind of repeats itself. So my hope, especially since we have long class sessions, 2.5 hours every Wednesday, that variety of going back and forth between working with your team and coming back together into the large group, we'll take some breaks now and again also, it helps keep that 2.5 hours not feeling totally draining, because I know that getting Zoom burnt out is very easy to do. It's one of the things that we learned very quickly during the pandemic in 2020. So I think that this sort of inquiry-based structure aligns with that really well. And those of you who are taking multivariable calculus with me right now have already seen that inquiry kind of model in action, because our calculus textbook is also built around inquiry. This linear algebra book, though, is even more special in that it's built around a team-based inquiry learning model. And so what the team-based portion of it implies is, first of all, that you'll be doing that inquiry work during class with a team of 2 or 3 other people. So that's the obvious piece of team-based. But what also goes into a team-based learning philosophy is sort of a particular kind of learning task that a lot of the activities that we do are going to ask your team to come to a decision together, come to a consensus together, and then be able to write up that consensus in the moment. So I'll share Google Sheets with you that you'll be writing up the responses to your activities in. Again, if you're taking multivariable with me, we do the same thing there. But that part of the work is coming together as a team and agreeing upon the solutions and the discoveries that you're making in these activities. And that also requires everyone to kind of bring a little bit to the table in the team-based learning process. And so at the beginning of every one of our chapters of the textbook, there are one of these activities called a readiness check. So many of you have already done the readiness check for today's module. If you haven't, that's okay for today. But the readiness check happens in kind of two stages. The first stage is a set of questions that you do by yourself. That's called the individual readiness check. So just as an example, so the individual readiness checks are just sort of multiple choice versions of a bunch of questions, and these questions are designed to be kind of background questions in nature. So these are not things that sort of require you to have learned linear algebra yet, but these are things maybe from your mathematical past, from previous courses, that are helpful to refresh so that when you come in to do the inquiry activities with your team, you have the prerequisite background skills are at your fingertips, and so you're ready to go. So the first step is for every individual to complete that readiness check on their own. The second step, and this is going to be one of the first things we do during class today, is for your team to come together and do the readiness check again. So it's the same questions, except that your team has to agree on every answer. And the way that this is structured inside of our learning management system is that it's structured as a quiz inside of Canvas. Canvas is our learning management system. And that quiz is one that your team is going to be able to retake as many times as you need to during class until you get to 100%, with no penalty or anything, because the purpose of it is refreshing everybody's memories and skills so that you'll be ready to go. So at some point early in our class today, your teams will have the opportunity to go in and do that readiness check. Do every one of the questions as many times as you need to until that 100% mark is reached. And then we all move forward into the new material from the text, sort of ready to go, having had those skills refreshed. So that's another one of the unique features of the team-based learning model, is that before every chapter, so there's a total of 5 chapters in our course, so that makes 5 of those readiness checks throughout the semester. And prior to the beginning of every chapter, there's one of those type of activities. Another thing you'll notice about the text is that it's not as much organized around sections as it is around topics. So all of these topics, we call them learning standards, have a little abbreviation attached to them, V1, V2, V3, and so forth. So they're grouped both by chapter. So all of the linear equations standards start with an E, the vector space ones start with a V, algebraic properties with an A, matrices with an M, geometry with a G. And so there are a total of, how many are there? 24 of these learning standards that comprise the material we're going to work through in our course. And this is part of what's called a standards-based approach to teaching, learning, assessment, and grading. And so now is as good a time as any for us to take a look into the syllabus so I can talk a little bit about my expectations and how I grade, because it's fairly different probably than the kind of styles of grading and assessment and evaluation that you might be used to from other courses in the past. So here's a copy of our syllabus. This is accessible both through Blackboard and Canvas, but Canvas is going to be our main home this semester. And the most important things I think you can find in this syllabus, there's of course a link to our text, but most important thing are these learning outcomes, the learning standards, all 24 of them that relate to the textbook. And then there are 6 additional ones that don't appear in the textbook that relate to proofs and applications. So we'll talk a little bit more about those as we get further into the course. And then some information about how mastery-based grading works. So these 24 topics, these 24 learning standards, your progress in demonstrating that you have mastered those, 24 from the textbook and 6 additional ones, that your progress in mastering those standards is your grade. So rather than have like some percentage devoted to homework and some percentage devoted to quizzes, some percentage devoted to exams, all it is what percentage of the learning outcomes, the 30 learning outcomes in the course, did you demonstrate that you mastered throughout the semester? So that sounds maybe a little bit intimidating, and maybe it is. But the good news about a standards-based grading approach is that each one of these standards is something that you get the opportunity to master more than once throughout the semester. And when you master it, you have mastered it. It doesn't matter how many times that you need to attempt something before you get it right. If you attempt something and you don't get it right the first time, or if I look at it and I say, I don't think this person yet has really understood how to, for example, compute the solution set for a system of linear equations. If I look at your work on E3 and I'm like, I don't think that they get this yet, then what I do is I give you some feedback to help you improve, and then you get another opportunity to reassess on that same standard. And so you're never held accountable to performances that are not quite ready. You're only held, so you're only credited for the mastery that you eventually attain. Because I don't care if you learn these 30 things on my schedule. I care that you learn them in the course on your pace, because everybody learns at their own pace. The only difference in grading systems is whether we penalize students for learning at different paces, as traditional grading often does, where if you bomb the first quiz or something like that, that quiz score weighs down your grade for the rest of the semester. Standards-based grading doesn't do that. There are always more opportunities to get feedback to help you improve, to reassess, and to demonstrate that you've mastered these 30 things. So that's the good news about this. And I feel like I adopted this strategy for grading in 2017. And I just flipped a light switch in my teaching. I went completely away from traditional points and percentages based grading and all in on standards-based grading, and I have not looked back since then. Students find that those opportunities to continually demonstrate mastery of something you haven't gotten yet make it easier to achieve higher grades, because you're not being weighed down by performances that you weren't quite ready to demonstrate mastery on yet. So that's the good news, but it is going to feel a little bit unfamiliar. And one of the dimensions of unfamiliarity that is involved with that is just involved with your gradebook. So how do you understand at any point in time how the progress that you're making towards mastering the topics in the course? Even the best learning management system in Canvas is, I think, the best one that's out there. Actually, Bridgewater is experimenting right now. We might be switching over to Canvas at some point in the future out of Blackboard. Maybe, maybe not. We're a pretty conservative campus, so we're probably not going to change anything ever. But Canvas is a pretty good learning management system to do this, but it's still not my favorite. So what I advise that you not do over the course of the semester is don't rely on the grades button inside of Canvas to get a sense of your progress in the course for the semester. Because Canvas gradebook still is looking at points and percentages, and there's no way to kind of break out of that paradigm inside the Canvas gradebook. So instead, what you'll see in the modules section of Canvas, which is where most of the action is, so that's where you'll find all of the links to the assignments, the quizzes, the exams. The Zoom link is in there, the textbook link is in there, the syllabus link is in there. So in the modules, what you'll see, and I'm seeing all of them because I'm the instructor, but you'll only see the one that has your name on it, a little link that says so-and-so's gradebook. And when you click on that link, it will take you over into a separate web page that only you have access to. And on that page, it's just going to be kind of a list in these 3 columns of which of the standards in our course we haven't assessed yet. So at this point, all of you will see that all 30 of the standards have not yet been assessed, of course. And then as you make progress on these standards, I will be moving these little cards from the not yet assessed column into either the progressing column or the standard met column. And of course, the goal is to get as many as possible over into the standard met column. Now, what does progressing actually mean? I want to talk about that real quickly. So progressing is the mark that I would give you for a standard. If you you do your work on it, and I can tell that you're on the road to mastery and on the road to understanding. So there are some green shoots of mastery in there. But if I look at it and I say, this person would really benefit from looking at this material again and reassessing before I can be sure that they've mastered it, then you get a mark that's called progressing. And so that's what's going to end up in that progressing column in your gradebook. And so anything that's in the progressing column means that you're going to have more opportunities to assess on that standard. And so the goal is always is to get that feedback and to use that feedback to help you improve. You don't, unfortunately, get any credit at the end of the semester for any standards that are still in that progressing column. And so your focus should be on getting everything out of the progressing and into the standard met side of the house. And the number of those standards that end up in that met column determines your grade for the semester. And the particulars around that is that I assign you what's called a base grade based on the total number of standards that you have mastered. So hit at least 27 out of 30 and you are guaranteed to get an A for the semester. Hit at least 24 as long as those 24 include at least 4 of the P outcomes. Those are the proof and application portfolio outcomes. Then your base grade is a B. 20 out of the 30, including at least 3 of the portfolios for a base grade of a C. 16 of any kind for a base grade of a D. Now, of course, a D is probably not the grade you want to get in this course because it is a passing grade, but it's not a grade that will let you transfer this credit to your home university if you're not a BSU student, and it's not a grade that lets you move forward to meet the prerequisites for our upper level math courses if you are a BSU student. So everyone this semester should be aiming for that C base grade. And of course, the nice thing about standards-based grading is you know exactly what you have to accomplish to do that. At least 20 of these learning outcomes, and at least 3 of those have to have come from the portfolio side. Instead of a traditional final exam, what we do at the end of this course is do a final reflection. So this is going to be an assignment, almost like an essay-based assignment, that asks you to look back on your progress in the learning standards of the course and do kind of a self-evaluation, talk about how you did, how you learned, what really worked well. Also talk some about your participation with your team, how well did that all go, your engagement with the material, etc., that kind of thing. And so that reflection gets submitted to me, and then that becomes part of a conversation that you and I have that determine whether an adjustment to this base grade is appropriate. Typically, those adjustments nudge the base grade up. You know, they could nudge the base grade up half a grade, or maybe 2/2 of a grade, depending, right? So if your base grade is a B, and then your final reflection indicates, actually, you're probably, you know, there's probably more here than you were able to demonstrate mastery of, and then maybe we nudge that up to a B+. So that's the sort of the final fine-tuning adjustment happens as a part of that final reflection. So that's the overall sort of strategy. You'll find a calendar in the syllabus that roughly just sort of mentions for each of our class meetings which of the learning standards that we'll be doing, a list of the activities that we're going to try to do together during the class, and the ones that we don't do during class you'll do with your team outside of the class, and then just other assorted course policies and so forth. The most effective way to get a hold of me and to communicate both with me and with other members of the course is through our Discord communication hub. So if you haven't already accepted the invitation to join our Discord, now would be a good time to do that. I will copy that link into the chat here real quick. Where did my invite link go? Here it is. So if you haven't already connected with Discord, please use that link that's in the chat right now to get connected. If you already have a Discord account, you can, of course, use your existing Discord account, or you can create a new one. If you don't have it, it's a totally free platform. I like Discord as a communication site first and foremost for myself, because as chair of our department, my email inbox is a dumpster fire most of the time. And so Discord is a much more responsive way to get a hold of me, because I carry it around in my pocket most of the day. And so if you have a question about something, if it's something that's private, if it's related to your own grade or something like that, you can private message me in Discord. You can private message anyone who is a part of the course that you're connected with. To private message someone, just find their name over in the people bar. If you don't see it, you can just open it with this little people symbol. And when you click on their name, I got to click on someone that's not me, there'll be an option to direct message them that pops up. If it's not a personal question that relates to you and your grade, if it's something that would benefit for everyone to hear the answer to, then I would recommend posting that kind of question in one of the discussion channels. So we have a general discussion channel that is mostly about course logistics, like where's the Zoom link, like, you know, what about due dates, that kind of stuff. That kind of information goes into general chat. There's also a math chat page, so if you have questions about math content that would be interesting for the whole class to hear the answer to, math chat is a good place to put that. I've created a separate channel here to have discussion about the proofs and projects portfolio. So the math chat will be mainly about learning the math content topics, and the proof and project portfolio will be for working on that portfolio. And then you will have a dedicated team chat channel that is just accessible by the members of your team as well as myself as soon as we form those teams during our first class meeting today. The other cool thing about Discord is that it has options to do video hangouts. So if ever at some point outside of our regular class time that we want to have like a get together on video chat, rather than creating a whole new Zoom link and using Zoom, we can just use this video hangout inside of Discord. There are also these study rooms that are video rooms down here at at the bottom, this is if you and your team members, for example, are working on something. You're like, hey, let's jump into video chat and collaborate. You can do most of the things in a Discord video chat that you can do during Zoom, like sharing your screen and all that sort of stuff too. So it's just sort of, it's a nice little sort of all-encompassing hub for communication. And I try to be pretty responsive during at least normal waking hours to messages sent via Discord. So if you run into any sort of tech support style questions, there's also a dedicated tech support chat channel here. This one is visible to all students in all of my courses for the semester. But of course, you can also ask those questions in the general chat if that's easier. Whew.